Thank you, Sol. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you inviting me to this gathering of the JNF. For the regulation, let's just say that if there would be a siren, hopefully it won't, I would try to take you with me to the shelter and keep on talking to you, but if it won't work, just bear with me and I'll be back. As you've mentioned, my claim to claim is for being a counterterrorism expert. That's what I did in the last 40 years, and in the last 28 years, I was the founder and the executive director of the ICT, the International Policy Institute for Counterterrorism, at the Reichman University. And just not long ago, a few weeks ago, I was appointed as the president of the university. And I have to admit that although, and I'll explain why, although I was not surprised from the war that was inflicted on us, I was surprised that it happened within 3 weeks after I was appointed as the president. They didn't give me even 100 days of being prepared in my new job. Why wasn't I surprised? At the ICT, the Institute for Counterterrorism, for the last 3 years, we have conducted maybe the biggest project ever with 100 experts. When I say experts, I'm talking about former generals of the IDF. I'm talking about former heads of Mossad, military intelligence, Shabak, and so on and so forth. And we asked them one question. What is going to be and what will be in the next multi-front war, if and when Israel will have to deal with it? But not only to build a scenario, but also to understand the challenges that Israel would face, and taking from there, what are our recommendations, how to contend with it. So as said, we had 7 projects within the overall program that we've conducted there, and we worked for 3 years. And the scenario that we have built is very, very close. Actually, it's exactly the scenario that happened. I have to admit that our scenario believed that the war will start in the north and would then move to the south. It happens in a different way. It started in the south, in Gaza, and who knows if it would also be inflicted in the north. When I say multi-front war, I refer to mainly 5 fronts. The main front is the northern front with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the most dangerous enemy of Israel in the Middle East. I'll talk about it in a moment. The second front is Gaza with Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The third front is what we call Judea and Samaria, the West Bank front, which also might impose many challenges to Israel during the war. The fourth front is the internal front, i.e. extremists from within the Israeli Arab population, as we saw them provoking against Israel and starting riots not long ago in previous rounds in Gaza. And we analyzed all of that. We came to the conclusion that the challenge would be unparalleled to any previous challenge that we have faced. And we came with concrete recommendation how to prepare the home front for that challenge, how to prepare the plans to win the war, how to prepare plans to contend with cyber attacks, and many, many others. One of the main recommendations that we had was to build local, independent in a way, or I would say under the municipal authority, emergency units built on neighborhood volunteers, because we have argued that the number of rockets that will be sent to Israel, if all of those frontiers will erupt, would be in the amount that the national bodies, such as Home Front Command, the Israeli police, and so on and so forth, will not be able even to get to all the areas of destruction that will come out of that. And our conclusion was that there is a need to build the pyramid bottom up and not top down in this regard. We had a concrete recommendation of how to prepare the security of the border villages, kibbutzes, towns, in a way that they can stand before the army would come for their help. And just we saw 2 weeks ago how this didn't happen. And when Hamas terrorists marched into Israel, it took a lot of time to the IDF to come and save the day and save whoever they could. Now, let me say as an opening statement that Israel is at war, but not with Hamas. Israel is at war with Iran. Now, Iran is a monster, is the head of the monster that holds two hands. One hand is a weaker hand, and this is the Palestinian Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad army, which is an arm of the Iranian monster. That's the weaker arm. The stronger arm is Hezbollah. Hezbollah, the Shiite Lebanese army that was built by Iran. In both cases, we are talking about huge capabilities that all of them have been built by Iran. They sponsor that with millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They built an enormous rockets capabilities. In the south, we are talking about a few tens of thousands. In Lebanon, we are talking about 150,000 rockets, which are aimed as we speak toward Israel. They built a ground army, boots on the ground type of army. We saw it, the Nakba in Gaza, but in the north, it's called Radwan forces, and Radwan forces are, the number is more than triple than the number of Hamas, and much better trained. They participated alongside Assad regime and Iran and Russia in the fights against ISIS and other organizations in Syria for many years. They know what they are doing, and all of that is a construction of Iran that is aimed on a certain situation. Actually, it's aimed for two purposes. The main purpose that Iran built Hezbollah for is to deter Israel from attacking Iran, from attacking the Iranian nuclear facilities. That's the main reason. But recently, Iran seems to have a different policy. We should ask ourselves, okay, if we're talking about a war with Iran, with a proxy of Iran that started 2 weeks ago, why then? Why did it happen 2 weeks ago? And the answer is that Iran saw in a very bad eye, actually they were terrified from what seems to be a normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia that was discussed with the brokery of United States. Israel and Saudi Arabia were that close to sign a peace agreement with normalization, which is not very common, and this would have been led to other Muslim countries, Arab countries, to join this normalization. That's problematic enough in the eyes of Iran, but it's much more problematic than that, because it was clear that this normalization would be the baseline for an alliance, a military alliance between those states with the hegemony and the umbrella, nuclear umbrella of United States, that would enemy, and this is Iran. And that's exactly what Iran wanted to prevent by conducting this specific attack against Israel. We are still puzzled if this is the only plan that they have, or do they still have a second stage plan, which is involving Hezbollah and creating a bigger regional war, maybe even a world war, if United States will intervene and Russia would intervene, and so on and so forth. Israel was suffering from a severe slap in the face from the weak arm of Iran, humiliating slap in the face. This was an outcome of a combination of quite a few misconceptions that the Israelis had. It's amazing how those misconceptions remind experts the exact misconceptions that we had 50 years earlier in Yom Kippur War. But it's even worse than that. We had an intelligence misconception. The first intelligence misconception is that we taught ourselves, or we told ourselves, that they are not interested in attacking us. Hamas is not interested in attacking Israel because they are preoccupied with welfare and they want to send more workers to Israel and get money from Qatar and so on and so forth. And they practically let us fall asleep in this regard. We also had a misconception telling ourselves that we have a physical facility, a physical capability that will prevent them even if they want to get into Israel. If you remember Bar-Lev line in Yom Kippur War, the same thing. We believe that the Egyptians will not be able, even if they would want to cross Suez Canal, they would not be able to take over the bunkers that we've built alongside the canal. Same thing with the fence, very sophisticated fence that we have built, very effective in prevention of smuggling terrorists to Israel through tunnels. But somebody forgot the scenario that really happened, that they can blow it away in many places simultaneously and actually run into Israel with motorcycles, with four-wheel vehicles. And when you have quite a few villages and kibbutzes and towns in the distance of hundreds of meters, not hundreds of miles, between the town and the border, if you're not prepared to that, if you're being taken by surprise, the outcome is quite clear. It was definitely clear to us in this regard. I think that the level of hatred that we saw, the level of inhuman behavior, this Nazi savages activity, that I would not spell it out because I'm sure you have been exposed to at least some of it. To the Israelis, I recommend not to be exposed to that because now we need resilience. And I would recommend the Israelis not to watch those videos until the war is ended. You can understand that was a huge atrocity. Some people are talking about the Holocaust. I don't think it's a Holocaust, but it's definitely something that we've never experienced before. I have to admit that once again, it was proven, in my view, that the Palestinians, although they deceived us and managed to do what they wanted to do, they shot on their leg or even in their heart. And they fell into the same mistake that they've done so many times over and over again by being engaged in promoting the interests of Arab states. In the past, it used to be Egypt, and it used to be Syria, and it used to be Libya, and so on and so forth. Now it's Iran. And Iran is ready to fight until the last drop of blood of any Palestinians, and maybe in the future, every drop of blood of any Lebanese, if Hezbollah will intervene. The Palestinians were happily joining this concept. They, many of them, most of them died during the operation. We are talking about thousands of them that died in the operation. And many of them are dying as we speak when we are trying to eliminate Hamas military and civil capabilities in Gaza. So they are paying an enormous price, but they are paying even a bigger price than that, because they didn't just slaughter Israelis. They also slaughtered, if you ask me, the chances for generation ahead of peace process with them. Because you have to understand, and you are talking to a person who believed always believed in two-state solution. You have to understand that whenever we would have Palestinian leadership that will be ready promote peace. We don't have it yet, but if and when we will have that, Israel, in any case, will need to take risks, military risk, because any type of peace will be engaged in taking risks. That's the nature of the situation. I don't see Israelis, right-wingers or left-wingers, taking any risks anymore in the coming years. So the chances for a peace process are actually null, in my view, today. And a few words, and I will conclude with that, few words about future scenarios. We are now in a very weird situation in which we are conducting airstrikes. We drafted many, some are saying 350,000 soldiers. Many of them are in the southern border, some of them are in the northern border. And we are prepared, locked and barrel, to occupy territories of Gaza, to have ground operation, not for the sake of conquering. I don't think that there are many Israelis who are interested in conquering Gaza again, but in order to eliminate Hezbollah. It's quite clear that you cannot eliminate Hezbollah, and that's the goal that the government have set to the IDF. You cannot eliminate Hamas with only airstrikes. If you're being called a liberal democracy, you can have achievements. We are having achievements, but when you have an enemy which intentionally is embedded within the civilian society, when this enemy, we have the saying that the Israelis are suffering from the missiles of Hamas, and Hamas is using its own civilians in order to protect their missiles. When you have human shields being taken by Hamas, the number of casualties, if you want to eradicate Hezbollah just with airstrikes, it's impossible to do that unless you're being called Russia or Iran or Syria. So the only option is with ground operation. The first scenario or option of the next stage, first of all, I tend to believe that the relative quiet that we have in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, is an outcome of American effort to bring about a deal, a small deal, in which some of the civilians will be freed as a humanitarian so-called gesture coming from Hamas, in return of humanitarian gesture from Israel that would let humanitarian aid in large numbers to get into Gaza. I believe there is a fair chance that this would happen. Some would say, but why should they do that? It's clear to them that the day after this deal will be conducted, Israel will attack them. Yes, they do, but it gives them three benefits. The first benefit is that they would so-called correct some of the savage image that they have spread all over the world, and show how so-called human they are by freeing babies and kids and women, mostly, by the way, with international citizenship and not just Israeli or double citizenship altogether. Second, it would give some relief to their own community in Gaza, and that they take this not very seriously, but they take it by consideration as well. And third, the most important, even if they will free 50 or 60 or 70 civilians, they would still have about 130 others or more, and that's more than enough for them to negotiate for whatever they want afterwards. So that's the first stage that might happen in the coming few hours, a day or two. But after that, there are three possible scenarios. The first scenario is that Israel would keep on and intensifying the airstrikes, and joined with very strict and very pinpointed ground operation. Some of them will be rescue operations, some of them would be targeted killings operation on the ground, and so on and so forth. The second option is that Israel would have a large ground operation marching into part of Gaza, could be the northern part of Gaza, in which Israel already threatened that that's what Israel is planning to do, could be another part of Gaza. The third option, by the way, if you would ask my recommendation, I would choose the third option, but the chances, it seems to me, quite slim right now, is that Israel will hold part of the forces surrounding Gaza, not conducting ground operation, but preferring to attack and eradicate as much as possible Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the biggest enemy. In my view, you remember this concept of the Iranian monster with two arms, the weaker arm, Hamas, the stronger arm, Iran. We got the slap from the weaker arm from Hamas, and now we want to cut this arm. I can understand why. But then it might be that the stronger arm will intervene. Hezbollah will intervene. That would be very difficult. We will win this war, but the number of casualties and destruction in Israel will be unparalleled. And the other thing, even if we would succeed to cut the Hamas arm of the Iranian monster, it would not really deter Hezbollah, because Hezbollah would say, okay, this is Hamas. We are much, much stronger than Hamas. But if we do the opposite, and if we eradicate the arm of Hezbollah, that would definitely have an impact on the overall geostrategical position of Israel, and will deter Hamas for many years afterwards. That's the situation that we are facing now. It's one of the most difficult and challenging situation Israel have ever challenged. Some people are saying this is an existential threat. Yes, if we would lose the war, it would be an existential threat. I think that the chances that Israel would lose the war are very, very, very small. That's why I do not refer to that as an existential war, but this is an unparalleled strategic challenge that Israel is facing. And I have no doubt that we would win the war. The only problem is what the price that we are still going to pay if each one of those three scenarios would come to place. Thank you.
So, Boaz, thank you so much for your time. Our other speakers are waiting. However, we have several questions. I'm only going to bring one up, and that is, can a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia still move forward?
In my view, the answer is yes. We have a very interesting, in a way, I wouldn't use the term moderate, but pragmatic leader in Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about MBS. And he understands, that Iran is the biggest enemy of Saudi Arabia from comparing to any other enemy. Iran is a Shiite, radical Islamist entity. Saudi Arabia is being regarded as the biggest Sunni entity, and we know the rivalry, the centuries years old rivalry between the Shiite and the Sunnis. When Saudi Arabia is looking around, they are saying to themselves that they are disappointed from United States, because United States under Obama and under Trump didn't give them the backup, or didn't give others the backup, other allies that they had, that they expected. Obama actually pushed or kicked in the bottom of Mubarak in Egypt during the Arab Spring, when Saudi Arabia was attacked by Iran and the Houthis in Yemen severely, destroying about 50% of their oil production. And Trump was saying, we are prepared, just give us facts showing that they are ready and we will react. They got the facts, they did nothing. The American, and it's bipartisan in my view, the American concept is some kind of isolationism, and that's very frightening for allies of United States all over the world, and especially Saudi Arabia. When they look around in their neighbors, they see only one strong entity that have the same interests like Saudi Arabia, and this is Israel. That's the secret behind this normalization process and alliance. So it will take time, but it is still possible, in my view, that this normalization will be signed at the end of the day.